Welcome back, Prodigal Sons. My name is Cam,
My name is Austin.
I'm Elijah.
I'm Luke. I'm Nate.
and today we're going to be doing my testimony. But before we dive in, we're going to do a quick icebreaker. And the question today is, what is your favorite song? So we're going to start with Austin. What do you got for us?
My favorite song has to be Come Sail Away by Styx.
Come sail away.
And
How's that go?
Come sail away.
Okay,
Come
yeah.
sail away. Sail away with me,
Yep,
baby.
yep.
Already.
And the reason for that song is that that was a song that I used to listen to all the time with my grandfather before he passed.
Oh,
So
that's
every
good
single
story.
time I hear it.
yeah,
It reminds me of
Mhm.
those memories.
that's sweet.
Beautiful. So
I like that.
Elijah.
Okay. It's a really hard question because I have my favorite bands. Like I think we talked about this. My favorite artist is Chris Cornell. I like him, but it doesn't have my favorite song. I like Alice in Chains a lot, and I really love Nutshell.
I was just gonna say
That's
that.
a
Yeah.
fantastic Rooster, fantastic song. Stained, another good one.
Stands so good.
But I have this song that, and it is getting combated by a band that actually Cam talked about
Hmm.
earlier, Cigaros,
Cigaros.
Cigaros, and I really like some of the songs he showed me from there. But a song that I've on my Spotify that I played about 12,000 times, I think, since I've had Spotify for like a year and a half. It's called Tessa by London Music Works, and it's not it's instrumental, and it just like takes you through this.
Mhm.
And I think Cam put it the best way. It's like this battle of kind of this person's vocals because while it's instrumental, there's also this like almost like angelic vocal
Mhm.
against this violin, and it's like I was telling my sister Bella, she goes to school here with us, and she's actually in the room. But I was telling her, it's like feels like the battle between family members, and in the end, one of them wins, but it's not happy. It's not a good ending to a battle. So it's really good, and it's definitely been my meditation or contemplating song
Yeah.
before.
That's good.
Luke?
For me, see, I'm a huge music nerd, so my Spotify playlist will vary from year to year what my favorite song is. At one point, it was Leonard Skinner Freebird.
Oh, dude,
There we go.
amazing.
So went from that. Before that was Fire Through the Flames by Dragon Force.
Yes.
um,
And everything.
uh, after that, it went to a guy called Kid G. He's a smaller time country rap artist, and it was I can't remember the song now. It's on my playlist. I know. I'm gonna have to find it now. But right now, currently, it is "Grandpa's Never Died" by Riley Green.
Oh,
That is,
sad.
yeah, that is a very interesting song. Um, yeah, it's
What's it about? Besides, what the band
uh,
is.
well, it's a country song, so I mean, it's basically going to be about obviously talking about how grandpa's never died, but it goes through other stuff. So like it goes through it's just a guy basically saying like one liners through the whole thing.
Hmm.
So like, I wish, the main chorus is, I wish beer never went cold. I wish old dogs. I can't remember the whole
I
song
think I've
now.
heard this song actually.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a pretty popular song right now in country music. Um, yeah, but I like it just because obviously the end of the chorus is "I wish grandpa's never died," and I don't know. I'm just going through that right now. My grandparents have not died yet, but when they do, I don't know how I'm gonna react to that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
But
no.
I know my uncle when he died, I cried.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
This hits home for you.
yeah,
Right,
it hits home for me, or at least it will.
Yeah.
At some point. So, but yeah, that right now is a song that is on my mind.
Cool.
Yeah, that has
Nate.
to be like my all-time favorite song. I don't
Yeah.
think I'll ever not like that song.
I'm gonna do three variations of this question.
favorite Christian song, God Only Knows by Poor King and Country. I've had that like hit me at some low
Oh, I love
points.
that.
Uh, modern day songs. Literally, I'm pretty sure last year or 2 years ago, it was like my top played song for Spotify. Light Switch by Charlie Puth. I love that song. You've never heard it?
No.
Yeah.
So like
I-
It's
Flashlight
his
by.
new one.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. And then I really like 80s music, and I'd have to say my favorite is I Love Rock and Roll by Joanne and the Jets.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. 100%.
See, I don't like that.
She hates the new song.
Yeah.
I love it. That's my
The
addiction.
Jets, so good.
But
Absolutely.
yeah, my music taste is all over, but I don't know. If I just like real good beats and good lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Okay, my favorite song is gonna have to be the song called Paradise by Wild Nothing.
Oh.
And it's a song that I've just liked ever since like mid high school that just kind of it just hits home with me. I can't really explain why. Just reminds me of the good old days and I mean I've overplayed it so much, I love that song so much. So although it's probably not my go-to for if I wanted to feel something for a song, but it's like yeah, it's awesome. So I'd say Paradise. So
Oh yeah, I remember the one. It's Teenage Dream by Kid G.
There we go.
Yeah, so that was a
yeah,
a
cool.
song that was popular for a little bit on my Spotify. So
Yeah, sweet.
How about Leonard Skinner, Freebird?
Oh,
Is it
That dude, that guitar. That's just
memorize that whole solo.
Dude,
and
that's like
sing
if
it.
Hunting and Fishing was a song.
Right, if Hunting and Fishing was a song, like we discussed last week, if Hunting and Fishing was a song, it'd be that.
Nate, you just like going through like saying like I love rock and roll. It's like it just like threw me down. Like you got like Survivor, you got like Eye of the
Oh.
Tiger, and it's like
yes.
and then it's like you just like go through and it's
Another one bites the dust.
Oh, and
I
I'm like,
love
oh, I
the
love
bass
Queen.
solo.
and then it's like oh you got like Phil Collins, you got
See, for me,
Dude.
I
you
like
got
Toto.
Genesis, you got like oh then you got Madonna, you got
Nirvana.
Nirvana. Oh, that's
Oh.
that's
90s though.
Yeah, that's 90s. Nirvana's 90s.
Yeah.
Now, yeah,
It's late
now you're gonna
80s,
get a
late
bunch of
80s.
angry
Led
older people.
Zeppelin.
That,
Okay.
Led
think they were still
Zeppelin.
playing
Oh
during-
my goodness.
They were still playing during the 80s.
Oh, Michael Jackson.
REO Speedwagon.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael Jackson. Like there's too many good
Sweet,
ones.
yeah.
Too many good ones.
Like they said, 90s is the best generation to be
No,
alive.
it's
because-
80s.
No, because in the 90s you had the combination of all the previous generations' music 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s all pooled into one generation.
No, I
And
think
then
80s
it all turned to crap.
had the
after that,
best
so.
music.
Oh, absolutely.
For
I
modern
like 70s a
artists-
lot. I love 70s.
I would have been perfectly fine being born in the 70s and growing up as a
Okay.
teenager
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
80s.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
The
That's
hot
nice.
rodding cars you could have had.
that
74 Camaros and shit.
was
would
like
have been
quite a turn. I
common.
like it.
Okay.
That's time
That's-
back to
that-
last week.
We're
so.
gonna
Yeah, wait.
I was gonna
Hold
say,
on.
oh, we should have done like favorite old car.
You did.
Well,
You were.
hold up. Austin
weren't-
wasn't here
Yes,
for last week's
you weren't
discussion,
here.
so he's gonna jump in
Yeah,
and tell
jump
us
in.
quick.
Wait, what
Yeah.
was last
Favorite
week's
car.
Favorite car?
favorite car brand of what? Oh,
Yeah.
Dodge.
Dodge.
And then
Okay.
which one? Which car?
Okay, it's a '69 Dodge Charger.
Obviously. It's
Absolutely,
All-
Dukes of Hazzard, man.
There you go.
It's
the
oh,
flip down grill. Or
oh
was that the 70s?
no,
No, I think
that
it was
had
69.
that had the flip that had the concealable headlights.
Yeah. I
Yes.
love that.
It's gorgeous. No,
Sorry.
it's amazing. I love it.
AC came out. Hood came up stock. It wasn't,
All
wasn't completely stock yet. It was an option.
right.
Yeah.
Let's get into
Alright,
Erskine's
sweet. So
testimony.
yeah, looks like we got the jitters out. Got the
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. So
Wait, we get your mic first.
yes.
Good catch, Elijah.
Good.
Good catch.
All right. Who wants to pray? Should I pray? I'll pray. All right. God, thank you for this time, this opportunity to share, come together and just bathe in your glory and your love for us, Lord. I just pray that today that the words that I speak are encouraging to just the people who are listening and the people who are here, and also just to me as I dive deep into my own mind and just discover more about you and how you worked in my life, Lord. So I pray all this in your name, Lord, and bless this time. Amen. Sweet. Okay, so yeah, my testimony. I was telling these guys beforehand that I was gonna definitely need a lot of help regarding like them asking questions, because to be at least I think, I guess we'll see. But my testimony is, it's hard for me to like look back and kind of see the way that, like, see fully the way that God's worked in my life, just because I feel like before I was a Christian, I was just like, I really wasn't thinking much at all about life or really anything, and it kind of just, there was just a switch that turned on, and I just kind of became very on fire for truth and life and God. So anyways, so I was born into an amazing family. My parents are both rock stars. My brother is a rock star. Everybody is such amazing people. But my parents aren't Christian, and they didn't necessarily raise me Christian, although they raised me with all the values that a Christian family would raise their kids in. So um, as I when I became a Christian, it's not like I really had to change anything about the way that I was raised, because they raised me so darn well already that I didn't. Um, yeah, they just unknowingly raised me Christian, almost. Anyways, so I was born to this family that wasn't Christian, and my both of my parents are very knowledgeable and they're very successful, and they decided to send me to a private school because they thought that um, the one thing that they wouldn't be able to give me in my life is um is the opportunity to have faith. They'd be able to provide me with knowledge and wisdom and love and care and money and opportunities for success and everything in life, except for if I wanted to have faith, to have that. So that's what they did. So they sent me to a private school, and I just, was a worldly person until middle of high school. So I would say that my first interaction with God was probably the end of 8th grade, when I was trying to decide where to go to high school. All my friends are going to a public school, the Hudson Public School. I'm from Hudson, Wisconsin. Um, and for whatever reason, God was putting on my heart at that time to not do that and to instead go to a private Christian school in Minnesota called Concordia Academy. And it was really just a surreal day. I remember I was vacuuming my kitchen, and a song came on that was like, I don't know, I just hit shuffle on like my playlist, which at the time had like 8,200 songs on it or something like that. I think it was like 8,200 songs, and like this one song came up that was talking about God. It's not like I listen to Christian music or anything, but of course this one came on because I thought it sounded cool at one point and added it to the playlist. Um, so that came on, and then I looked at like my clock, and the clock had like some time on it that was really significant to me. Had, like all these like little coincidences happening at once. And then later that day when I was at school, um, Concordia came and visited me, and they did like a worship service. The high school kids came and played worship songs for our school, and we all sang along. And um, the the worship leader looked a lot like my cousin who had just passed away from like a week before, and he's just this amazing guy. And he just talked to me and he said, "Hey, come to Concordia." And like, there's just more for the other day, just a lot of weird stuff that really pushed me towards to go to this Christian high school. Although every single one of my friends that I'd made was not going there. So it was this really hard decision, but I just did it. And I ended up going to Concordia. That's really weird. I didn't thought about that until now. I don't know, like that's so crazy. I just decided to go there, and like
Yeah.
I left my whole life behind just for no reason. Really, that's kind of
As a kid.
right. So I was in 8th grade. I'm like, okay, I'll just do this. I'll go to Concordia. Anyways, so I get to Concordia. Um, I meet Kyle. Uh, uh, and I don't know if you guys have met Kyle. Not Derek, who we call Kyle. Not that one.
I know that.
Yeah. Okay. So
I think you
tall,
should describe Kyle.
yeah,
in
tall
that way.
redhead, funny, awesome guy,
Amazing.
amazing guy. Love
Yeah,
Kyle.
good
And
guy.
Kyle comes and sits next to me in our first class, and we hit it off. Um, and we just relate a lot. I became really good friends with him. He and I started to click really well, and we started like making other friends and talking with teachers a little bit about God. I started diving into it a little bit, just kind of the idea of God. Um, and then later that year, I met another guy named Eli, who we call Griff, because there was two Elis in my choir class where I met him, and I didn't want to deal with that, so I just called him by his last name, which isn't even Griff, it's Griffin. So
You
Um,
shortened it up.
right, shorten it up. So, anyways, these two guys, Kyle and Griff, we kind of grew in our faith together, and we kind of all came to Christ. I don't want to speak for them, of course, but it really felt like we all kind of came at like really at the same point, and that was and a sophomore, I would say, probably going into junior years when we really became serious about our faith. And it's really hard, like I said, for me to elaborate more about what changed. But one day I was just talking with them, and we're like, this is awesome. And we just did it, and I just felt really pulled to it. Um, and being a person who was raised in a household that wasn't Christian, I naturally resorted to all of the logic and the theological questions and all the defense mechanism or like the defense for the faith kind of ideas. And I looked a lot into theology, and the more I looked into all this stuff, the more I was encouraged, and the more truth that I saw and the worldview that I was taking on, and I was really excited. And then about senior year is when we like really started to like explode in growth. Me, Griff, and Kyle led a Bible study for our school during lunch on Wednesdays every week. I ended up giving a sermon at the end of my senior year before I left, and really I was trying to center my whole life around the world, on the Lord, not the world. Yikes. Um, so it was just this awesome experience. Lots of cool talks with the guys and just learning more about life and God and how everything kind of ties in together when you see it from through the Christian lens. And it was just pretty awesome. So the big thing that I came experience God through is the medium of art, and I spent a lot of time looking into movies and music that kind of tie in with the ideas of life and truth and God and love. And I would say that some of the biggest movies or some of the biggest moments in my life have actually been after movies, where I apply the themes and the messages of the movies to my life and to my walk with Christ. And I've been really fortunate for God to be speaking through those to me. And I had it's a lot, and also I had Kyle and Griff to share those experiences with because we were all interested in it together. So it was really just this beautiful thing, this beautiful culmination of interests in art and music that were similar. Both walking these Christian lives where we were able to encourage and support each other. We all kind of like fought the battle of lust together, and that was really encouraging. Fighting the battle alone is really hard. Having accountability partners is what I was really blessed with during high school. So that was awesome. Just faced a lot of things that we were able to take on as a group, and that was awesome. Um, so then, of course, leaving that was hard. Leaving kind of like what Luke was talking about last year is that you have all this time put into your life. And for his case, it was the church, and for my case, it was school and the friends I made at school. Um, So then coming to Western, to college over here was really hard the first semester because I didn't have that. So um, just want to thank you guys for being here to provide that for me because it's been awesome. And to kind of rekindling that idea of walking towards the Lord as a group and community as he made it for. Um, so yeah, that's like generally my testimony. There was a lot of things that obviously happened in between and like some crazy stuff that some awesome God moments and such. But I would say that that's kind of the general blueprint. Regarding where I was before Christ, I was heavily into my and still am, to be completely honest. Um, really into my self-image and popularity. Like freshman year, oh my goodness, I was such a jock, such a like brainless jock. You know, like freshman football player, the whole 9 yards.
What'd you play?
I was all over. When I was a freshman, I was a lot heavier, so I played O-line.
Mm.
But as I played more and later, I got into defense, but whatever. But so just a big jock, like the total like thought he knew the world and still struggles with pride. Um, but yeah, so I came in with that, and the more I dived into Christ, the more I realized that that's not what what actually brings pleasure. And it was cool to learn that alongside Griffin Kyle because we just made some shifts in our lives that were all very similar. And so that was before and obviously after coming to Christ, finding more beauty in the things of selflessness and community and pointing attention towards others and loving others rather than self, has really been fulfilling for me. Um, so yeah, I mean that's kind of like baseline cam testimony. It's kind of been this change of like over time. I can't really pin a date on it. I can't even pin like a month on it. It just was this thing that gradually happened, and I just saw the Lord work more and more in my life. Kind of during the summer of that sophomore going into junior year. So that's uh that's kind of my testimony. I mean, if you guys want to throw some questions my way,
Of course.
whatever.
Yeah, I would say, when you kind of posed this question to me, and in my testimony, and so I'm gonna kind of switch back on you, and yours is gonna be maybe a little harder to pin because you've had so many years.
Mhm.
Like, what is the way you saw or have seen, even let's say in the last year, the Holy Spirit work through you and help you improve or help you come closer to God?
Yeah. Um, well, obviously, like a lot of guys nowadays, the whole struggle with porn was real. Growing up in uh, like even like the my middle school, like we were all like really into that kind of stuff. Obviously with no one to tell us that it wasn't okay because for some odd reason, a lot of Christians don't like to talk about it and don't like to discuss how harmful it is. And they, instead of actually elaborating on why porn and fleshly lust and sexual desires in a distorted way is bad for the brain, they just say don't have sex before marriage. And I'm really against that. But anyways, um, doing that, I mean, I was a huge into that early high school. All
It's not that you're against sex before marriage, like
No, no,
saving
no, no,
sex
no,
for
no. I'm
marriage.
saying
It's
is the way that we, right, the way that we just say that and leave it there without actually diving into it is really dangerous
They don't
because,
dive into it with younger people. They
right,
expect you to come up and say, "Hey, I'm struggling."
Yeah, even that
That's my
they don't want to talk
and
about it
that,
because they're
yeah,
going through
because
it
they're
and they
going through the
haven't
same
addressed it.
thing.
right, yeah. So it's the same thing. It's like if you just tell a kid not to do something, that's not gonna
Yeah,
work.
it's not gonna work.
Like if you like, it's just gonna turn into
For
something
me,
rebellious.
for
So,
me, I had a struggle with porn,
yeah,
and my thing is since I was homeschooled, I just went on the computer and was like, "Hey, what is this crap that I read on the PG-13 movie, outline, like on sexuality or whatever it
right,
was, contains sex scenes? Like, what is that?"
right.
Um,
Yeah. So
yeah,
it's
so
obviously when I'm just told not to do something, that's the first thing that I want
it's
to
the
do.
first
So,
right.
um,
It's the
so
mindset.
right.
We're all like children at
Yeah,
heart. So
yeah. So, um, it was really cool seeing how the way like God moved in my life to work that out of my mind. Um, and I like obviously I think like a lot of other guys, we've had this damage from the sin because sin has consequences. That are probably going to be permanent to some degree in the way that we um let's think about sex and the such. But it's really cool to see the way that God has like through time, of course, eliminated some of those ways that I used to look at it, and instead prepared it and supplied my mind with new visions and new constructs for what sex should be and what sex ought to be. So I would say that. I would say another thing is like well, it's just something that we were actually talking about today, just regarding like my patience and just my frustration and whatnot. I would say before I became a Christian, I mean, my temper was like, the shortest temper you've ever seen in someone. And I do think I get that from my dad. Um, and if my dad watches that, he'd be the first one to admit to that his temper is pretty short. But just growing up with that was something that was passed down to me, and I just had no patience for anything that wasn't, um, what I thought was right. So it's been a walk, but the way that God has um worked in me to show me that like my agenda, my schedule, and my ideas for life aren't always right, and that other people's perspectives have merit as well, has been awesome. And I think that that's something that's really unique to Christianity in the way that there's a relationship with God, that He is like sanctifying you in a way that is showing you what it is like to be more like Him, and that's something that's really been cool. Just kind of diving in and letting Him do that for me is really cool. Um, so yeah, I guess that's what I would say is just regarding my patience and my own self-image and with obviously lust, like a lot of guys struggle with, which is something that's been I've just seen such progress with that, especially since like you compare where I am now compared to what my mind was, sophomore year of high school. It's just like it's just a completely different mind. It's completely, it was so disgusting and ugly the way that I would think about those things. So it's really cool to see that change. So
So I got another question. I think it fits in. Is along at least along the temper thing too.
mhm.
Um, or just being short, right? Patience. Have you found it hard to submit? And if so, how? What are ways you've overcome that? Or
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess diving a bit deeper, like my parents, like I said, are rock stars, but it's like that's like an understatement. So like the way that they raised me was just amazing, and they're such amazing people. And I had these loving people support me so well that all my life I've been told and raised in a way that's like, Pam, you're awesome, and it's like just this constant reinforcement of, you know, such a good son, and like you like all these achievements that I've had, and all of like the ways that they've pushed me towards success, and I've seen the fruit of that, and it's seeing that and then being told by whether it's parents or other people the same things, it's the constant boosting of my self-image. And then whenever I'm faced with someone who is posing an idea that isn't something that I already know, it's frustrating for me because I feel like whatever they're about to say has no value. And that's something that I've struggled with because I feel like I know everything. Um, and even definitely subconsciously still. And when someone shows me a new way of looking at things, it pisses me off. It's almost like a subconscious jab of saying, like, at least in my mind, Cam, like, you already know it all. You've already been raised so well, and all these things, like whatever they're about to say, you don't actually need to consider or think about because you already know it, right? So that's
It threatens that identity that
right.
you have for yourself.
and so then I guess that brings up the most important question is if you have that identity within yourself, goes back to the submission thing. It's like, how secure do you find yourself in a hard question to pose?
Yeah, I know where you're
Yeah.
going.
You
Like,
know how to word it.
like, where are you on the lines of submitting to God the fact that the identity that you've created for yourself might not be the identity that Christ has for you?
Yeah, that's definitely, and obviously that's what sanctification is, right? Is to move closer and closer to what God wants for you. But it's definitely hard when you've been raised up in a way that is telling you that you're good, right? And then you feel like you don't need to change in a lot of the ways that you live, which is so untrue. And that's something that I've had challenging with. And it's weird because like both sides of the spectrum are equally bad. Like for example, one person who has been raised and been told that they are utter worthlessness and have no merit, can have similar struggles in finding their value and identity in Christ because they feel they don't deserve it. While on the other end of the spectrum, you are in the position where you have been told you're awesome and great and you feel like you don't need to change anything, when in reality, you're no better than a piece of garbage in comparison to what Jesus expects from us, right?
Yeah.
So both sides of the spectrum are are devastating. And I find myself on the side where I've been raised amazing and I feel like I am the best. And I struggle with um, accepting that I need to change every day and that I need to die to myself every day, as Paul writes. And that's something that I have to, like, obviously, like a lot of things as Christians, you have to push through the flesh desire, right? And you have to submit to God. And I guess my struggle is pushing through the fact that I am not by any means where I need to be. I am by no means better than anybody, um, and by no means have any more value than anybody. And that's something that's really humbling to realize, especially coming into a group like this, where I I join a group where so a lot of people have been Christians a lot less long than I have, and I have and there's that thing sticking in my mind, and it's saying, Pam, you know more than these people. So for them to help you learn anything would be like it's not going to happen.
Right.
So I'm closing off my mind. I'm thinking, okay, my job right now is just to teach, and I'm not going to learn anything. when in reality, like I have learned so much from you guys. It's so crazy. So like thinking about that and just in that perspective, it's like really humbling because it's like, no, Cam, you're not that you're like nothing, dude. You need to like you need to
Mm,
submit to God in the way that you're submitting to others, right? That's what we're told to submit to, and love others. So
the fool precedes the master, right?
yeah,
Like, I don't know if you
right,
guys
yeah,
ever
right,
heard
right,
that, but it's
But
like
yeah, yep.
the idea of there's different stages of learning, and you get to that point of where you could, yes, be considered wise or a master, but always having that mindset of the fool or the person who's new,
yeah,
right? And say an apprentice,
right,
even, right? Keeping that open and always constantly wanting to learn something because there's no,
sure,
you can never understand God,
right,
really,
yeah, and yeah. So it's just been this constant battle of like humbling myself, looking at things from a perspective that I um of an open mind and knowing that the church exists because people have different skills that work in harmony with each other. Like there's different parts of the church, different member or body parts of the church, like like Paul writes in I don't know if it's Romans or Corinthians, but he says like there's an eye and an ear, and like like an eye isn't better than the ear, and like who is to say that the eye is better than the ear when there's different functions, um, and I've failed to recognize that there are many different characteristics of the church, and I've instead, especially at the earlier parts of my Christian walk, I've instead looked at it as like I'm the whole body, and I have all the functions down to a T, and everybody needs to bow to me. Like really, and that's been my struggle, and it's so ridiculously rooted in the devil that it's just it's really it's pretty messed up.
So with that, um, not to cut you off or anything. Also with the whole body thing, the body analogy, uh, as your body, you know, with going with also like spiritual maturity, your body as it gets older, it changes a little bit, in senses like, obviously puberty, obviously it's a big change. But like, so with that too, that's just showing, also the fact that like, when the new Christians come into the church too, that would
Mm,
kind of be like that too. I just thought
Mhm.
about that right now.
there's
Yeah,
always changing
Right, it'll
the
be
body.
it'll be always be changing.
Okay.
right.
Not just also that's obviously there's gonna be the core parts.
Mm,
But
And yeah, being someone who's placed so much value in my own experience and my own learnings and my own readings of the Bible and other Christian authors and books and such.
well, and your own
It,
self identity.
yeah, sure. And
Yeah.
it's like to see someone new to the church come in and
Right.
for me to think that they can offer something. Like
Yeah.
I'm like laughing in my head. I'm like, oh my goodness, what is this? And that's
Mm-hmm.
so awful and that's so dangerous. And that's like it's yeah, it's just something that I've realized more and more is just so toxic and it's just so dangerous for the church and my own heart and my own walk with God.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's been it's been an interesting year for me. Um, especially with people to pour into me and like rip me apart and make me realize these things. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, okay. It's like, okay, I need some work. I need some tuning up. Um, and for people to be doing that to me when they're like new to Christianity,
Mm-hmm.
it's like a slap in the face. It's like, oh my goodness, Cam, you're like you're nothing, dude. Just sit down, right? Just listen. Submit yourself to the church and
and think about it from our perspective is we're seeing someone who's been involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And has been down a lot of the roads that we haven't been down yet. So now we get to learn. God's using you to teach us, at least so we can come back onto it in the future. Is always be open, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's an example of what can happen if you do become closed off,
right, yeah,
and how hard it is to come out of that,
yeah,
right?
for
And
sure.
so, like, we learn a lot from you just for on that
Yeah,
basis in general. So
right.
it's really cool that all intertwines.
Yeah. Yeah. It is cool because it's it's just a more display of how the church has multiple facets and functions, and it's so cool. So, um, yeah.
I was
So,
gonna say, what's a
do
I was gonna say, what's a
Save mine till the end.
what's a moment you come back to, something that you use as a something in your past that like helps you connect with God, right? Or connect. Do you have one of those moments? Is it a passage particularly that, or a story from the Bible that you find
Hmm.
keeps you going,
Yeah.
or helps you connect with God, or brings you closer?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. I have a few. One that I really like is it's from yeah, it's from Psalms. It's Psalm 73:25. That's a verse I really like. And it's never really a verse that I've seen someone mention before. I don't know why it sticks out to me so much, but um it's yeah, so Psalm 73:25, and it says, "Whom have I in heaven but you, and earth has nothing I desire besides you." Um and I guess what makes me like that so much is it's kind of like a self-check to it's like I read that every so often to make sure it's like a checkup verse. It's like, okay, what in your life are you valuing and is it rooted in Christ? And if not, you should get rid of it, right? And also it's the other part of it that goes and it says, are you desiring heaven because God's there, or are you desiring heaven because that's where you think that's where all of your earthly pleasures are going to be fulfilled, which is
Mm,
not what heaven is.
yeah.
Um,
Because we always think that we're gonna go to heaven and see all our family members
right,
and
right.
get to live that like American dream, right?
Right, yeah, like jogging through
Yeah. Driving that
Portugal.
the
69
streets of gold
Mustang,
and the yeah, just
getting
like
Yeah.
through the
revving up. It's
highway.
like
Yeah, like
and I'm not sitting here saying that heaven isn't like the pearly gates and like golden streets.
mhm.
I'm pretty sure there's descriptions from visions that do support that, but that's not
Well,
that's
also
not
it's called the new heaven and the new earth. So if we're gonna get a whole new earth, that means we're gonna be able to build 69 Mustangs from scratch. That's just my impersonation. Like if you think about it, it's a whole
right.
new earth.
Right. But so that
Yeah. So, but yeah.
what that verse does for me is that it checks that and it says, whom have I in heaven but you, right?
Hmm.
Am I
Mm,
wanting that that eternal life because God's there, or is it
mm,
Yeah.
because, my own perception of what I think heaven is?
Hmm.
that's
So
deep.
so it's yeah, so I'm looking at it from a perspective of like okay, Paul Washer says it the best. I don't know if any of you guys know who Paul Washer is, but
I
he's
do.
awesome. Paul
Yeah.
Washer, he says, everybody wants to get to heaven, but no one wants God to be there when they get there.
Hmm.
It's
Huh.
like everybody wants paradise, but no one wants to deal with the righteous God, the the judge. No one wants that piece of it. They want it's like sex before marriage. It's like
Yeah.
you want the pleasures, but you don't want the consequences and the commitment. It's the same
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
So it's like when you get to heaven, are you wanting to get there because that's where true goodness is, that's where God is. That's where everything is about everything is there, and those are your answers and like true love, or is it because, you want
Pearly gates
a
and
chocolate sundae
right.
and a beach and a cool beach,
Yeah.
whatever,
Right.
whatever it is, fill in the blank. So I like that verse a lot. It's encouraging to me because I think I would look back on a verse like that because it shows me that for one, like I said, it's like a mental check, but it's also like, okay, Cam, all of those earthly things aren't actually going to fulfill you. So like it would make more sense that you have God in heaven being your true goal because, it's like, you know, you can only walk through um, walk on a path of gold for so long before it just seems like you're walking on a dirt path again.
Mm,
Beauty fades. So
mm.
it's like just two versions of a mental check that I really like. So I like that verse. Another one from I think it's from Peter. I don't remember. No, I think it might actually be from Acts, but it says, "Lord, I believe, help me in my unbelief." Um, and it's pretty because it's like I feel your presence in my life, Lord. I know you're there. Help me in that earthly, fleshly unbelief that pulls me away from that every day. Um, I like that. I like praying that prayer a lot because doubts are real, especially when you have a mind like mine that if you have a mind like mine is what I yeah mind like mine um that is has a lot of my marbles placed in the logical and theological and philosophical side of things regarding my faith um so yeah, so doubts are real and I like praying that prayer and that verse and reading that.
Mm.
So I think those are two things that
So going back, about to cover what you just said, and maybe hopefully this isn't your question, has to do with you've expressed quite a bit that you're into the theological, right? And um, that's where you place a lot of your marbles. How has that affected let's say your relationship with Jesus, because theological is very analytical. It's very like factual. What's the emotional side look like for you?
Yeah. So that's actually something that I've been working on a lot recently, and it's something that Pastor Jake actually spoke on the other week, and it really hit home for me. I was sitting there crying in the pew like a baby. Um, but I realized that I've placed a lot of my marbles in the logical side of things and not as much in the emotional side of things. Um, and I guess what that looks like is I've been raised really liking art and all this stuff, and I've always wanted to be an emotional guy, but I don't think I really am. So I think I'm like pretending to be emotional so that I can like reap the benefits of like what that brings.
Mm.
Um, so like I guess what that looks like is me just asking for more of like a relationship with God, and I don't know. I mean, I would love to hear a bit more from your guys' perspective on what that looks like. But
Like an emotional
like
aspect.
like the emotional side of my faith it's like it's kind of lacking because I've right
Mm.
and it's just it's hard for me to jump into that and like really give into that because it's um I don't know because I don't know it's hard for me to explain that but I don't know it's a good question and it's something that I've been working on a lot lately and it's hard for me to work on because I don't know how to work on it other than just to ask for it and I feel like I've seen a bit of progress but obviously not as much as I would like and I'm never going to be perfect but I don't know. If you guys have advice, I would love to hear it, especially for listeners who maybe feel the same.
For emotional, I'm a pretty emotional guy. I try to, the man, mask all your emotions.
Mhm.
That was one of my struggles I talked about last week. In my testimony, with my depression stuff, stuffing it all away. Um, for emotional, you just gotta let it out. Whatever emotion you're feeling in that moment. Big thing,
Well, how do you let it out?
you just let it out. You just let it all go. A big thing would be like crying when you feel like you need to cry.
Well,
Being angry,
I want to cry.
then cry. Just do it.
Well,
Just do it. Like no, that's what I'm saying.
Stub your toe.
No, no, no. Like for me, like I've done it. Like at fall retreat, I must have cried a lot at that thing. I'm confident of it. Well, I know I was crying because like the emotional aspect. That was the big that was another big key like turning point with fall retreat. Obviously, I already said this in multiple testimonies, and I'll continue to say it until something else happens. But for fall retreat, that was like the big changer for me. It just showed me that you know everyone else around me is like opening up and all this stuff. Why have I not opened up? Why have I not just let it all out?
Yeah.
Cry when I need to cry. You know, I've been, but I've also been pretty emotional. Uh, just throughout my whole life, I've noticed that I'm actually pretty emotional. So,
Yeah.
Well,
and I get pretty easily emotionally like triggered. So, like if something gets me mad, like I'm mad,
Yeah.
like right now.
Yeah. I, I think I'm able to um I think empathy is something that I've gotten good at especially through art and like being able to see passion that an artist has for his own piece and for me to be like in awe of that like oh my goodness whatever he is composing or making or drawing or painting or singing about or playing about I could feel like an emotion there and I can say hey that's something that you're passionate about and it like invokes something in me or it provokes something in me that is it's like longing for that and I love that
Mm-hmm.
but I can't tune into the part where it's like letting it out. I don't know if I have let it out. I don't know if I've never had like a breakdown, cry, faith moment, you know?
Never had a fit of rage.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, let's just say
That's an emotion.
Well, sure, but not
a fit of
not like a
a
Christian.
Christian like cry thing. Well,
Like,
you'll get it.
I don't.
eventually.
I think you're romanticizing it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I might.
But
And
I don't know.
Okay, because from
I'm-
hearing your guys' experience,
No,
I don't think I am romanticized.
No,
'cause
well,
I've never
it's
had
like,
something
I
that's
don't-
really similar to that.
I don't think I really. Okay, well, I watched The Chosen, right?
Yeah.
And I
Have you ever watched
I
The
explained
Chosen?
that. Well, I explained that. It's like it made. That was because of particular instances that were going on in my life. I don't really know. Like that question is a question I ask because I don't understand really either. Um, I mentioned this too. I'm pretty analytical as well, and maybe a little more emotional. Um, but how to understand that question. I don't think I even really know, or how to tell someone how to be more emotional. That's a really
Got any ideas, Austin?
yeah.
So,
Here comes the wisdom.
uh, going back to the original thought, um, part of what I would say is that I think that there is a lot of shame behind feeling like we can't show those emotions or it's bad to show those emotions. And I think that that's where we may want to show those emotions, but we feel shame from, like, most of the time it can be an external shame, sometimes it's an internal shame of someone in our life has told us there's two options. Someone has either told us that we are invalid for feeling those emotions and that we shouldn't be feeling those emotions, or we have been told the entire time that it's so great, and then when we feel those emotions, there is a self shame of everything has been great for me. Why am I still feeling these emotions?
Hmm.
And both are completely valid for you to still feel those emotions. You can have an absolute picture perfect life and still be sad, still be angry. And those emotions are 100% valid, and you should feel absolutely no shame for those. And in a spiritual sense, if you are feeling no shame towards those things, Christ wants us to give him that shame.
Mhm.
He wants, he knows that we're not perfect. He knows that that shame is there. I have felt shame for the longest time of feeling emotions. Same goes for me. I am a very emotional man that I spent my middle school and high school years, I was a stone wall. I did not like showing people my emotions. I really didn't. Because I personally thought that the person that people would see if I showed my emotions, people would not like that person. People would not accept the person who I really am when I show emotion. And I think that's part of something that we have to give to Christ because Christ knows who we are. Yes, Christ knows that it can be the absolute smallest thing and I can start tearing up.
Mhm.
That's it. That is who I am as a person. And to be able to understand that, hey, there are going to be people in my life that are like, that's too much for me. And I have to be not only in a accepting level of I accept Jesus and Jesus knows who I am, so I can love myself in that sense, but also be able to turn that back around and say, all right, it's okay if those people don't like the real me. If I can be that me and I can like it.
Mhm.
So I think what's interesting about that for me is that I don't care what people think about me at all. I don't think I've ever had to deal with that. I've always been very bodacious in my
Mhm.
opinions.
Mhm.
And so I don't think that's what's holding me back, but I don't know. I guess I have no saying. I don't know.
Which then leads me to believe that it is some sort of internal shame.
Huh.
And I don't and that's something that obviously you have to talk with God. But
Okay.
that like yes, if there was never a point externally where someone said like Cam, you're not supposed to feel those emotions, you're not supposed to do that, like that's not what we do as men,
Hmm.
then at one point or another, some you either had a thought or there was an experience where even subconsciously you went, it's not good to do that. Something happened there because that doesn't just turn off,
Yeah.
you know.
Or maybe you just haven't had the feeling yet because nothing's major has happened and you're like that.
Sure.
You're talking about like emotional like sadness, right? A big
No,
one
not
or
even sadness. I
no,
wouldn't say
okay.
sadness.
Okay.
Stone
Hmm.
Cold Killer.
Interesting. I don't know, you seem pretty happy, so I just assumed okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know then. Yeah.
And then going back to the original piece of having an identity in Christ. And I know that Elijah and myself and you, Cam, we had kind of talked about this on our own, but it was like I truly do believe that there is, they talk about heart, mind, and soul. I think there is a part of our spiritual journey where it's like, okay, have we disconnected God from the knowledge and from emotions? Those are two very human things, like the need and want for knowledge. So do we feel more connected to God because we know more things?
Mm.
And the more truth that we believe that we know, does that mean that we're closer to God in that sense? And on the reverse side, if I can feel more emotions, does that pull me closer to God? And I think both of those are false. I don't think that quest for knowledge, and I don't think that the ability to feel more emotions than someone else allows for a more in-depth relationship with God. I think that those humanize something, it humanizes God in a way that falsifies what God really is.
Mhm.
And so I think there is a humbling in that of like we need to be able to pull up the human part of ourselves out of our perception of God. We are, me reading through all of this, all of the Bible, that will allow me to live in the presence of God, have that relationship with God. The knowledge and the wisdom that I gain from this is not what gets me closer to God.
Mhm.
What gets me closer to God is being able to have that relationship with Him daily.
Right.
Is there a human relationship, though, the way we conceptualize it is built on at least some sort of emotion, right?
Yeah.
And so how does it that you're taking out of emotions from the idea of God working to that?
So
Is my question.
that's an amazing question. Can a human being love unconditionally?
Well, absolutely not.
Okay.
That would require constant attention. And then we've talked about this, require constant attention with the intention of understanding, right? And so that would be really that we need. God gives us rest for a reason.
Mhm.
Because we can't attend to something.
So, ergo, my question: can the human being have enough emotion to love God?
No.
Can a human being love God unconditionally? No.
No.
No, we can't.
Hmm.
And so it is a very deep and thought-provoking piece, but it's like, okay, we can have as much knowledge and as much emotional adaptiveness as we want, but that doesn't connect us closer to God.
Because we're still limited by our human aspect.
We are still limited by our human aspects. And so those pieces, yes, they can connect us here. Truly, they would connect us deeper in the world.
Mhm.
But to have the conceptual idea that those things also connect you deeper to God is a falsity.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So
Well, I don't know how long we've been going, but if you want to ask your question that you had, and then we'll probably wrap it up, right? How much?
Mhm.
Yeah.
15-ish minutes, but
okay. So my question for you, Cam, and this is probably going to be more of a lingering one. I don't know if it'll really be something that can be answered per se. And maybe it's something just for everyone to think about is where in my life am I truly humbling myself and connecting to God through loving Him instead of loving the gifts that He uses to connect with us. Because the Bible and knowledge and all these things, These are all things that connect us to him, but they do not make us love him better. So my question for you is, what what have you been working on in that department of have you been I guess it's have you been living each day side by side with God and not side by side with the things of this world, posing those as God?
Well, I think God's. I did you say that you think that the gifts that God has given us don't help us love Him better? Is that what you said?
I think if we try to use the gifts as a if we use the knowledge that we have that God has given us and we use those in the sense of this is going to let God love me more.
So you're saying God love us more, not us love God more? Or are you saying both? Because I think the Bible, I think that's a huge purpose of the Bible, is for us to know God more so we can love Him better. Because loving means submitting to Him more, right?
Correct.
So I mean, I would say that
I'm
that's what
saying
this is all about, right? Like,
I'm saying that we can know God more through the Bible. Yes, we can know God, we can have a better understanding of God. And to have a better understanding, yes, that is love. But so you read through the Bible and you read every single page, you read every single piece. Are you just done?
no.
No. We have to stay, like Elijah was saying, we have to stay in that mind of the apprentice of, yes, God, I have I have understood you to the extent that I have in this very moment. Let me understand and love you more. He's not going to love us. He can't love us any more than he loves us right now.
Mhm.
He can't. So if we're sitting in the idea of like, okay, God, I'm going to keep reading this so that you can love me better, that's wrong.
Okay.
We should be reading and we should be doing these things in the idea of I'm doing this so that I can love you more, God,
Mhm.
instead of the other way around.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the question you have for all of us, I guess.
It's all of
Yeah,
us.
right.
Yeah,
It
it's
would
not
be.
it's not just
Right.
Not just
specifically you.
you,
Sure.
right?
No,
Even listeners.
Yeah.
you know?
and the listeners.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That was a great ending question. I like it.
Sweet. Well, I think that's a good spot to leave off.
Mhm.
So I hope our talk today made sense. We were kind of all over the place, but
This felt more of like a testimony and a little bit of our like kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
of our prelude to what Prodigal Sons is gonna
Yeah,
be,
right.
you know? Like
Right.
this like
that's good.
talking about
That's good.
understanding God and how to
Yeah.
live in their life.
So
Yeah.
so sweet. Well, thank you guys all for tuning in. And we'll do a quick prayer to end us out. Um, Lord, thank you again for um, just giving us this community to be able to discuss these kind of things and really um, work to see how the topics that were brought up today apply to us. Help us to mull over this question that Austin has proposed, because we know that your love is unconditional and infinite for us, and help us to tune into that, and help us to receive that without, I guess, any sort of boundary or barrier, Lord. Help us to fully bask in the love and wisdom and kindness that you offer to us every day. Help us to die to ourselves every day and the fleshly desires, Lord, and just fully help us understand what it is that you've done for us, Lord. So thank you again for this opportunity for me to share my life. And I just put that out there, Lord, and I pray that in some way you use that to help open my heart a bit more. So thank you again, and we lift this time up to you. Amen.
Amen.
Sweet.
Beautiful.
All right. Well, next week we're going to be discussing Nate's testimony, and then I think after that we're going to be flying into some fun discussion. So stay tuned and have a good one.